Just got away from me today.
No worries.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Want to welcome everyone to tonight's Power Commission meeting. Just like always, like to ask somebody to share the opening ceremonies.
I'll do it.
Okay.
Our Father in heaven, we are thankful for this nice day today, for the opportunity we have to meet as a Power Commission, and please help us to be able to make good decisions and good recommendations, and to be able to consider all the input that we have and the various options that are available to us. We are thankful for the wonderful community we live in and for the opportunities we have to serve here. We are thankful for the freedoms and peace that we are blessed here in this land. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Alan. So introductions, I'll start us off. Brock Thane.
Alan Farnes.
John Lovelace.
Stacy Harvard.
Gary Hatch.
Bruce Rigby.
Okay. Just like to read our mission statement. So as we're working through all of our open agenda items that we consider what our core values are, is Kaysville City Power and Light's mission is to provide reliable electricity with superior customer service at a competitive price to residents and businesses in Kaysville City. So with that, everyone should have the meeting minutes in front of them. I was wondering if there was any changes, or if I would entertain a motion to approve them. Let me put them open for discussion. Is there any changes that anyone saw there?
I don't remember.
Everything looks in order here.
Perfect.
I'll make a motion. We accept the minutes.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sorry, we'll do it backwards. Okay. So I did call Sean and leave a message. So if anyone else wanted to reach out on this item, I know that was his item, and so if anyone else, I don't know if anyone's had a chance to talk to Sean. But if not, I'd like to just table that discussion until we can get a hold of him.
Well, we keep putting it off, but we have the numbers and stuff that I got for him.
Oh, you have all those?
Yeah, had them. I'm the one that did all of it. So anyway, it was
Okay.
and then let him look at it, and then he had. Well, in fact, it was sent to you guys too, way back when he did it. But so I don't know.
Do you have them in front of you by chance?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we looked at was kind of tried to guess, as far as time and stuff. So we figured the equipment expenses, the 2 meters and the programming was about $250. The installation of the new equipment for the crews and stuff was about $125. Net meter agreement, the time spent with that and done was $60. Meter reader, about $36. The billing was about $50. So anyway, that added up about $521. We looked at other cities, how much they charge. Bountiful was about $450 for the labor and the meter. Heber's $300 just for the programming of the meter. Logan's $371. Lehigh's $500. So Sean's recommendation was for us to be at the $400 mark for that. And that doesn't include any kind of load study or anything of that nature, you know, any of that timing that would be in there also.
Can you go back through those numbers one more time?
Oh, sure.
Sorry, I was trying to write them down.
So, yeah, equipment was, the 2 meters in programming was $250.
Okay.
The cruise time and to installation of the new equipment was $125. Net meter agreement time was $60. Meter readers time $36. Billing was $50. So that was $521 total.
So if there was a building permit, that would be in addition to this
Yeah, that's
521,
all.
correct?
They're already
Okay.
paying that now. Yes.
Okay. So currently, are they paying any of this 521?
They're paying $100 for a production meter, and that's it. Right now.
$100 and that's it?
Yeah.
Okay, so if these were enacted, a net metering customer would pay an additional $421 on top of what they're paying today, if we went with all of these numbers?
Well, it'd be, the difference would be, we recommended $400, so the difference, they're already paying $100, so the difference would be $300.
Oh,
would be
okay.
the change is all.
So you're saying the total is 521?
521, but we looked at other cities and stuff, and then he just, you know.
Oh, okay.
His proposal was to charge $400.
$400, oh, okay.
Yeah. So like I say, $300 difference between what we're charging now.
Okay.
So walk me through, if I was to say that currently we have a plan to install AMI meters, right, on every home. So if I was to, in fairness, if the production meter is 100, then is it safe to say that if 250 minus 100 would leave it with the 150, right? Is that fair to say? So realistically,
Yeah.
What I'm saying is 521 minus 150 is going to get you really close to that 400 number, right? Because you're going to be, what is that exactly? 460, 471, is that right? Sorry.
Minus 150.
451 minus,
Oh, 451?
sorry, 521. Sorry, I
521.
can't read my handwriting.
Minus 150,
Yeah.
so 371.
So that's pretty close to the 400, right? Because we're just saying have them still put a production meter. Will we need that production meter anymore?
Yeah, we'll still need it. That's just for everything they produce. So in case there's ever renewable energy credits or, you know, value in those, then we'll need those meters for that purpose. But we're not currently, you know, reading those right now.
I see. So yeah, I think 371 to 400 seems right. I mean, because you're still getting your crew, you're still getting your net meter fees, you're getting your meter reading, and these are real costs, right? So should it be 371 or should it be 400? What are your thoughts there?
Excuse me. Well, you raise a good point that if we're already, we're already budgeting to upgrade everything to these time of use meters, it would be kind of, if we charging them 371 actually makes sense. And more real to the costs.
Yeah, I mean, do you guys have a heartburn with 371? Because it would just be exactly what it is, right? Alan, thoughts on that?
I'd make it a more even number, 370, 375, something.
I like that. Make it easy. 375's
Yeah.
371.99.
Sold.
Today only.
That's right. So it sounds like we're all in agreement within $25. So I would say 375. And how about this? I'd entertain a motion for $375 for a residential connection fee.
I'll second that motion.
You have to make it first.
Oh,
Sorry.
oh, I thought, okay.
Yeah, I was saying I'd throw that out there for it.
Oh, okay. I make a motion that we institute a residential connection fee of $375.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Throws me off being first. So, okay. Okay, so moving into the work items, we still had a lot of this is actually centered around commercial solar, commercial feed-in tariff, the backfeed capacity, power purchase agreement. So we'll start with commercial solar. Bruce, I'm going to kind of let you start off. I know there were some outstanding items, and Gary, that we wanted to talk through that, I want to make sure that you had urgent things. So let's focus on those first, and then.
Can we step back a little bit?
Sure.
I don't know if we need to clarify on that motion you just made. You said residential services.
That's right.
Instead of net metering residential services. I don't know if that's a technicality we need to go back on or not.
Okay, we can do that.
I would probably advise it just because we're referring to net metering connections, not residential, all residential connections.
Okay, so let's step back. Before we do that, let's get it exactly right. What is the name of the schedule of the residential? So we can just refer to that. I know we called it Schedule A, because I think the confusing part is our first customers are net metered. Our next customers are on a new schedule. Do we know that schedule off the top of your head?
I'd have to go grab it.
Yeah, because we're not connecting up any new net metering. There's a different terminology for the new ones.
Yeah, what do we call the solar? I don't know. Solar rate structure? I don't know. I'm trying to think how I would clarify it. Generating facility.
No, there was a different term, but this is the connection fee for all new solar residential customers.
As
Yes.
of January 1st, 2018
Yeah.
forward.
Okay, so probably you could clarify just like that.
Okay.
Okay.
So that will include all new customers, just the way you word it.
Okay.
Is it just for residential, or do you want it to include commercial?
Commercial
Or
would be
any
different.
other-
I think it's going to be a different animal
Okay.
from commercial. But
Okay, so it is strictly residential.
Okay.
So
And-
what did you
and
call it
starting-
again? New residential solar customers?
From January 1st,
Well,
2018.
well, we
you
can't
can't
go retro. It's
retroactive.
gotta
You just
be
have to go from the
starting-
time the Kaysville or the council
Yeah, whenever
approves
the
it.
council approves it, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's okay, we want a motion to increase the connection fee for residential solar customers. That will be $375. Okay, that's our motion. Do you want to second it?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Thank you. So next item would be commercial solar. So, Bruce, I'm going to let you talk on. I know there was a bunch of urgent things. I want to make sure that I think we clarified most of them last time, but I know there's still maybe a few things that we want to talk through, and a lot of these are based on that. So I'll just turn it over, and if you want to take it from a hot item number one.
Okay, so you want to start at the max residential system size? Or we already did all that, didn't we?
Yeah, so we're on just the commercial solar. So is there anything else that we need to talk through? We talked about aggregation last month when we were okay with that. We talked through, we got the rates approved for commercial. And if you're okay, I can move right to the power purchase agreement. But if there's still anything else outstanding.
Well, no, other than, I sent you guys those documents to look over and then kind of mentioned, I think the way that it makes sense is for us to have two separate commercial metering arrangements. One with the feed-in tariff where we're not going to let them produce more than they consume during the year. It's based on, their size of their system is based on their consumption.
Yep.
And then the other being like the hydro or the school, where it would be a power purchase agreement, and but then we'd have to decide what that rate would be that we'd pay them for that.
Yeah, so does anyone have any comments on the power purchase agreements that we're
Yeah,
circulating?
on the 3-page feed-in tariff policy that you sent us, it says, third paragraph down under eligibility and program structure, it starts with any customer. This is really only applicable to commercial, isn't it? Not residential.
Yes.
So we ought to clarify that, I think.
That was on the feed-in tariff page? Document?
Yes, feed-in tariff
Okay.
policy. It's a 3-page document. I don't know if you have a copy of it.
I don't have it with me. I have it on my computer.
Yeah, it makes it look like it's available to anybody, and I don't think we want residential customers putting in that big of a system, do we?
No. Nope. And those, yeah,
Then I
you
have,
can tweak those documents. That's just kind of a,
on the top of the next page, it says, grid interconnection in front of the customer meter, in quotes, the in front of customer meters, achieved either by actual physical point connection. I'm not sure why it's saying either when it's,
what other choice is there? Huh?
yeah, it's not giving me a second option
Okay.
here. And then the next sentence I couldn't make sense of either. Payments are made for metered production, the method for each customer.
Yeah, I didn't write it.
Okay.
So where was that at?
I'm going to try to mark
So
them up.
where was the third one?
They're all in the feed-in tariff, right?
It's, yeah, it's the second page of the feed-in tariff policy. And it's the first 2 sentences on the second page. And then write the first part of the third paragraph on the first page. Looks like I've got one more. Item number 3 on the third page refers to, it's a list of requirements. It says receive engineering approval of the project plan. We probably need to be more specific of who's the engineer that's going to review this. Is it somebody on the city staff or someone contracted by the city, or is this the solar company hire an engineer to review it? I don't know.
Clarify
but
that.
Yeah, we might want to clarify that. Unless, it's city staff, I'm not sure who we're after there, but,
Yeah, it wouldn't be, it'd be contracted, so.
okay.
So, and just to clarify, even though it says feed-in tariff, I think that might be confusing as well. Because are you hoping to replace, so the commercial solar program that we're putting in place currently is a feed-in tariff, right? That we approved the rates were feed-in tariff.
Yeah.
So are you hoping that this is actually the power purchase agreement for the hydro and some others outside of that feed-in tariff, or are you hoping that this is the feed-in tariff policy for every commercial project moving forward?
Well, did we have a final decision on that we wanted all of the commercial connections to be line side?
I think that was last week. Or
Last one
month,
was the
right?
that we were going
Let
to.
me check here. I'm pretty sure we did. With the rates, when we did the rates, that was a feed-in tariff. Just check. I'm pretty sure we did.
I thought our commercial was, we limited it to how much power they were using.
Right.
This feed-in tariff goes in if they're wanting to over-generate based on their actual load, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if it works
That's where
for.
it would apply. Because the other
Well, that-
issues we talked about, we wouldn't let them overproduce more than they were going to use in a year.
That's accurate, yep.
Right, and I know that's where it's kind of confusing because the power purchase agreement would be for anybody overbuilding their system, more, over their production or their consumption for the year. So I have to clarify, see whether that feed-in tariff part fits both those applications. And the one, over generation ones that have to sign a power purchase agreement, like I say, we'll have to write a new agreement for both of them as far as, the net metering, no, not net metering, but the solar agreement, or generating facility agreement. We'll have to change the name, huh?
Because correct me if I'm wrong, here's what I remember, is that we used the exact same language with commercial as residential, and we said that you could use 100%, so we called it a feed-in tariff, and then what we said was, I believe what we said was, if we did, I think it was 4 months, if they overproduce for 4 months, so let's say that they installed solar January 1st and we went through 12 calendar months. If we found that they overproduced over 100%, then the next it was either 4 or 6 months.
6 months, they'd have to pay that back. That's the way the residential was, yeah, so I think the commercial was that way too, so.
We just kind of deduct it from what they would have been paid.
Correct.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So the question is just to kind of, so that we're on the same page, because we probably just need to call them rate schedule, C1 or, come up with a name, but
Yes.
just so that I understand, is the feed-in tariff that you sent out for commercial, or is that forget all of that, and what we want to really do is sign a power purchase agreement for people that are outside of that category?
Yeah, well, that's what I thought, thinking that the feed-in tariff was for all the commercial, right? And then have a different rate schedule, like you said, for the ones they're gonna overbuild, have to sign that power purchase agreement, which would obviously be at a lower payback rate.
That's right.
But we can
Do
still.
you know what that would be? We're referring to the average cost.
Yeah, we'd have to.
But you don't know what our average is right now.
Average,
Yeah.
or bought off the market, or there's different, or what? I mean, there's a lot of million different.
Well, it's spelled out in this other.
It'd probably
bigger one.
be. I'm thinking
Not
it'd be
sure
around.
where it was.
Have Jordan look at it, but I'm sure it'd be be lower than our other rate, so it'd be in 4-cent range. I'm thinking.
Somewhere it said what it was. I'm not seeing it, but I know I read it. Didn't.
Was that part of the Jordan's commercial rates? Is that what you were looking for, or?
Yeah, the feed-in tariff rate, somewhere it referred to how we would calculate that, and I can't remember
I have
the
that.
exact wording on it.
I was just making sure. I'll pull it up. I think I have it right here, actually. Loads.
Was he referring to the commercial or the power purchase agreement?
The commercial rate.
Commercial.
You valued it.
Well, it's
Because we'd have to,
Different
it'd be a
for
different figure.
no, it's in here. It's in this interconnection standards. I think the buyback, how we were going to calculate this feed-in tariff, it was
No,
it's in one or the other.
It's right here.
It's not in that one.
Commercial A.
No, it's in these
It's not in the.
documents
It's not
saying-
in the. We didn't write it in the interconnection standards. Jordan hasn't even responded about any of that, so he hasn't had any input. So I don't know. Maybe in theirs that they do. I know it refers to reviewing it, annually to make sure that the
Looking for rates.
That's right here. It's on the second page of this document. It says the city will look at its average wholesale power cost excluding transmission. The city and city council approval may readjust the 20-year standard offer for Class 1, whether negative or positive, during the 20-year power purchase agreement. The city has no obligation to review power costs more than once a year. So we're averaging our wholesale power costs. Do you know what
we can
that
change
cost
the wording
would
on
be?
that too. Like I said, that was just an agreement that we put out there to see what, if we wanted to tweak on there too.
So you don't have a recommendation yet of what this rate's going to be under this?
No.
And if it was strictly for solar customers, I would say base it on whatever you can go buy industrial solar at. That ought to be the going rate. But you want this to apply to your hydro people, whatever they're doing as well. So then I don't know what rate to recommend.
Right. We'll have to look at that a little closer. We'll see what.
And is the goal to have a template PPA for everything below 100 kW? Or what I've seen in the past is, you have a T's and C's, and then what you'll have is you'll have them submit their rates of what they can actually hit, and then we review that to see if that's something that you'd want to take on. So is it something are we doing this backwards, I guess, is the question, or is that, or is the intent to have the T's and C's in line?
Everywhere I've seen that has done it has set a certain price for, at each size, at 100 limit, and then at anything over 100, that it goes down as they get bigger. So I don't think it's that. In my opinion, it shouldn't be up to them to decide. We should decide what the rate we're willing to pay, and instead of having to make a bunch more work or whatever, trying to evaluate each one separately. Like we set a rate, and if they want to do it, they do it.
So a couple ways to do it, and that's fine. The other way to look at it is we could run, so like a lot of these bigger utilities, they run RFPs for it. So they'll even say, hey, what can I get hydro? We're interested in hydro. They'll release it, see what those rates come in. So then usually what I see happen is they put in a draft T's and C's that this is what we'd like, and then the final terms and conditions are still negotiable with the developer. But then you're seeing what's out in the market, and having them pay. So for example, the issue that I see with this is, let's say that we go this is just talking power purchase agreement, not feed-in tariff, not commercial. Commercial customers, they offset their load. But let's just say we have a commercial customer that offsets 100% of their load. So we offset 100% of that load, and then all of a sudden they have space to grow. So now what we're saying is enter into an agreement with us for a power purchase agreement. And if we don't change the rate, so we've seen this exact case on these facilities here, right? Is we've limited it to 100, and now if we just open it up with a base template of a power purchase agreement, now we're actually saying, well, you can actually do more, but what are we saying? Do we want to decrease the value, even though we've had that value? What, you know, or would we just say, hey, you know, I guess I'm just confused on what the, still I'm trying to just determine what the intent is, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. If you had each one do it separately, then you're saying that everybody'd have a different rate that we're paying them. I mean, that I think we need to standardize it. It needs to be what our determination is of what we can get solar for and hydro for, you know, and based off those numbers. But
So
everybody needs to be the same, you know.
Being on the other side, on the conflicting side here of the renewable side, usually what we'll do, honestly, when we go in and let's say we're talking Bountiful Power, for example, we'll go in and we'll put the rate in front of them, and then they'll usually hand us the template, the T's and C's. So it's, you know, so instead of being, you know, this is outside of net metering, this is what you can negotiate, I guess, is you may, by setting a rate, you may influx the amount of people that come in, or you may never have any, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to tell you to deal with this, because all solar projects are not equal. You know, if you get a west-facing one, that has more value to you than an east-facing one. And I don't know if a blanket invitation is the right way to go. That's what this is we were just opening the door. We'll buy all of your production from you at this price, whether your system has the same value to Kaysville as the next guy does. We're leaving it pretty wide open.
Yeah, until they get time to use rates, and that would even some of that out. But still,
they are going to go strictly 4 kilowatt hours, which will be probably south facing. But west would really have more value to us than south.
yeah.
Then you throw in battery storage, and they could say we're a solar-powered peaker plant that will sell it to you between the hours of 5 and 9 p.m., and that would be the most valuable of all.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can tweak anything. Like I said, those were just rough documents just to get started. So,
Well, this is our first discussion, so I
Yeah.
know we're kind of all, and probably should have responded to the emails so we could get it going here, right? But what I would say is, you know, from what I would see is I think putting a template out there, I think you are, to Alan's point, I think you are opening yourself up to saying, okay, everything we've put in place for policy to 100%, now we're saying, well, but you can actually do more than that. Do you know what I'm saying? So now you're saying now we can do up to 100 kW, and how do we want to handle
yeah,
that?
unless we want to change the size and hold them down, you know, put a lower number in there, you know, could say up to a certain kW, you know.
Well, does the city want a bunch of these 100 kW systems popping up all over the place? Or are we trying to encourage that? Is the city wanting to get more green power? Is that where we're going? Because if we are, it would be easier to just have one contract with an industrial solar.
you're saying.
Yeah.
Right, just trying to,
If we need the green power.
just trying to facilitate, you know, the residents and the
Well, this isn't for residents.
not residents. I'm saying
The commercial.
people who
This
own
would only
businesses,
apply to commercial.
people that have businesses in
Or-
Kaysville.
Or somebody who has an open field. Are you going to let anybody come in and say, I have a field, I want to put a whole bunch of solar panels in? Or do we want to drive that option? Because that's what
Well,
we're
I think
opening up.
that's where the rate would come in. If it's in the 3 cent range, they're probably not going to do that. You know what I mean? That's where like I say, we can lower the KW size. We can do whatever wherever you guys, however you want to try to manage it. I was just trying to think of a way to let some of those those oddball cases like the hydro, where they're going to be.
I still think it might be easier in the case of the hydro. That's a one-time thing. I would do a power purchase agreement with them. I don't think we need this. If we need this for the schools and the systems the schools putting in, then let's address it toward that. But you're not going to have more people trying to put hydro in the city.
Right. Yeah. So that's all.
It's a one-time thing.
We just have to clarify that. But I think once you do it for one, then it opens it up to you have to do it for all.
If it's a power purchase agreement, that's an individual contract.
But we have to have an agreement and a policy for that to facilitate that.
Well, it's
power
no
purchase
different
agreement.
than power purchase from Hunter or Nebo or wherever else you've bought power. It's a separate contract. Doesn't impact the next contract.
Yeah, I don't know. That's like this new territory, this hydro. So
Yeah, but it's a one-shot deal. You won't have another hydro in Kaysville. You might have another UAMPS project that you participate in, but I don't know that we want to come up with a blanket thing that opens the door for everything just to cover the hydro. Let's deal with the hydro as its own project. That's my recommendation.
And what
then we could also. I'm just trying to think of trying to keep it fair for everybody. If you have like I say, we're still going to have a policy and everything for it because it has to be in our in our bylaws. But I guess we could state hydro, and that would for hydro, here's the power purchase agreement for hydro. That maybe we can even define it a little more, saying that operates during our our peak hours in the summertime. Even we could.
Is this a Weber Basin project, or is it a water user, a different water user?
It's Hates Creek irrigation. So they're going to be, like I say, I really want to facilitate it because it's going to be running during our peak times all summer long, and not in the winter. Not when we don't need it either. It's going to be just so. That's what I'm just saying. We can tweak it so that it fits their situation.
And what if you did this? What if you took and just threw an RFP out, solicit it, and just said, we're interested in X amount of hydro that can be produced on our grid that's 100 kW or whatever, it's built around that size. Then I think you don't need and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you need, if you run an RFP that says Kaysville is interested in doing this, then I think you could enter into an agreement outside of needing a template. And then what that allows is maybe there are others that want to do hydro in Kaysville. And so then what you would say is, hey, we ran a one-time RFP, and they would come in and they'd present. They would give you the rate, and then I think what we would give them is a template, terms and conditions. So, I think.
Who would you send the RFP out to?
Just public, open. So I see this no different
We
than
could look
schools.
at, like Rocky Mountain Power, because they were going to put this on a different reservoir.
Yeah.
But it was on Rocky Mountain Power System, and they were only going to give them 3 cents.
So what Rocky Mountain Power does, and they just recently did this as well. So 2 ways that they've done it. Number one is they file, and I think maybe this is what you're talking is, they file what's called a qualifying facility. They have a separate rate schedule. So Schedule 37, I believe, is posted rates for solar specifically, but that's above 2 megawatts. So basically what they say is anything above 2 megawatts, and I think they cap it at 3, then you file a qualifying facility that you have to pay an engineering study, and then they'll come back in and they just post rates. But just because those rates are posted, that doesn't mean that they're current. So then after the study's done, they send out those rates back to you to say this is what those rates are. That's one way that they do that, is to have a separate schedule for larger systems. Then they also have a RFP process. So they actually just through state statute, as of January 1st, are eligible to run an RFP for themselves to build solar projects. And they just released the intent to build, I can't remember how many megs, of projects. So then they just released the RFP. Here's the standard template document. Then everybody will submit, and then they'll review that and they'll score that. So those are the two ways that Rocky does it.
Well, we know we have a customer that's, I don't know that they're even a customer, but somebody who wants to sell us hydropower. So we could just negotiate directly with them. We just need to get the right documentation and agree on a rate or whatever.
Yeah, like you said, instead of opening it up to everybody, make it more specific
Yeah,
to the
because
hydro.
I don't know that I would kick that door wide open for everybody.
Right.
You'll just create more work than is necessary. I mean, we know they're interested in building the hydro and selling it to us, so I think there ought to be somewhere we could get a document through somebody in UAMPS or Weber Basin or somebody who has a similar project that we can just kind of plagiarize their agreement.
I have plenty of these agreements. I can send you samples all day long.
I don't know that we want to open the door. This is pretty vague and pretty, if we want to deal with solar for the schools, let's deal with solar for the schools. But I think we just ought to have a power purchase agreement with this hydro.
Yeah, that works.
So would it be fair, so let me just make sure we're on the same page. Would it be fair to say that, if you get a call that says, hey, we're interested in anything above our net metering, then every project would go through board approval for a power purchase agreement? How do you want a power purchase agreement? Because I think that's really I think that's what the intent of these documents were, is just to say, okay, well, step one, we've got to check this box, and this box. Is that fair, or am I off?
Yeah, no, that's the direction we need to go.
Okay, so maybe we say process then. What would you recommend, Alan, for process? So let's say that a customer and we happen to know one, but let's say there's multiples. What would we say a fair process? We're not giving you a template is what we're saying right now. We're suggesting, what do we feel like the negotiation process for a PPA should be? John, do you have any ideas on that either?
Have to think
This is
about
out
it,
of my
though.
scope.
I definitely think an engineering study, which we're going to talk about backfeed capacity, right? Who pays for that agreement? I think that has to happen, or for the ability to send electrons down the grid.
They do.
Yeah.
Okay,
definitely.
so that's the first thing I think is we need to have a load study, right?
And that's covered in this pretty well. Canned Island has to be synchronized. It's got testing requirements, all kinds of, this covers it. I just don't think we want to open the door for everything. The hydro one should be handled separately, I think.
I think if we structure the prices correctly, if we open the door to everyone, that the price structure will set the demand for people to get into, for companies to do this. Because if they're only getting 3 cents for solar, they're probably not going to put in, a tiny little system, 50 kilowatts or something. But they maybe someday they'll put in 2 megawatts, and the cost structure would fall out, and 2 and 3 cents would be a good idea for them, and they would be willing to do it. But someone doing 100 kilowatt system probably wouldn't make sense for them. Where maybe this hydro customer, it would make sense to them.
And we've got to start out by giving them some range, a value that we think this is worth so they can justify whether or not they want to install the equipment. You know what
They're going to do it because it's kind of tied to some of their other contracts and stuff with the government. So they're going to do it no matter what, the hydro.
So what are their options if we don't give them a decent rate?
They have to live with it. They knew that up front. I told them that there
Take
wasn't
whatever they can get and be
wasn't
happy
even-
with it, huh?
But
And
like I said,
they're funding it, or are they getting government
I think they're-
funding?
I don't know the details, but I'm assuming they're getting some grant money.
So,
Well, what if we structure it to our advantage? We want power during the peak. That's when we care about it the most. So we give them a really good rate if they can produce it during the peak, and we give them whatever we would have bought it otherwise for during the off peak.
so what if we did this? I think that's let me start a little bit ahead and then end up where you're at. What if we just said we're only going to call these two? So Rocky does this all the time too. What if we just said we want 2 sample projects as a power purchase agreement?
But we've got a captive audience. I don't know why we want to keep it getting bigger than staying focused on the project at hand.
Right, and when I say 2, we have 2 projects that are issues, right, or that are different. We have the school, and we have the hydro, right? So I'm just saying these are our sample projects, and that's all we're doing for power purchase agreements at this time. And then what we do is we have them, and this is common too, we have them file what's called an 8760. So that's how many hours there are in that's how many hours there are in a year. And then what they will provide is they'll provide a generation for all of those hours for 1 full year. And then I think you can actually value it because you can see exactly when they're going to send you power for that every hour in the day. And I mean, the utility world, you could actually do it for, times that by 4 and go 15-minute intervals, which is also fair. But is that what we're trying to do? As far as if we just said those 2?
I don't know. I was under the assumption we were going to make the school hold to not let them produce more than they consume during the year, so they'd be on the commercial rate, it's not a power purchase.
So maybe it's just 1. Maybe it's just we want 1 sample. Stop. 1, we're there, right? And we go through and see how this one works. This is our first one. It's new territory. Because I'm with Alan. I'm going to be honest. If you throw out some PPAs, you'll have a line of people, and probably me included, right? You'd probably have a line of people, just being candid, that would be here. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I don't know if we're prepared without having a sample project to say this was successful or this was not successful.
And if you have a power purchase agreement with one individual, one company, you can set your rates, evaluated at whatever increments we want to set it at for over peak or over the summer peak. Not so much spring and fall, because they will produce some spring and fall that may not be as valuable, especially solar. The hydro maybe not so much, but it's a little tougher in your rates than it is in a power purchase agreement. You can customize those for whatever the situation is. We might eventually get to it for solar, but I think for the hydro, it lets us give it a lot more value if it's over peak during the summer months.
I agree.
Yep.
I don't know if there's any way that they can adjust the flow so that they're not producing as much at nighttime. I don't know.
Right, we'd have to talk
But
to them.
if you can give them that incentive to do that, they might find ways to do things they hadn't thought of. If it's worth twice as much over peak as it is at night.
Right, but until we get time of use, how are we going to?
Well, you can require them to do that. Have them put that in, that type of metering in right from the start. How far out is this?
Couple years before we're fully
So,
implemented.
yeah, we should be close enough to have time of day to make that work. Make that part of their installation.
The hydro's sooner than a couple of years, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I meant the time of
okay,
use. I was talking
misunderstood.
about time of use rates. It can be a couple of years.
Yeah, our time of use.
Hydro, actually, it won't be till 2019 before they're up and running. They want to build it now, but the pipeline that they're going to take out of Second North, he said happens in 2019. So, but they want
So what year does it go online?
2019 next year.
That summer,
Yeah.
for the irrigation season.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we with the time of use?
We won't.
That's what I said. It'll be a couple years before that. That's what I was thinking you were
To
talking
get
about.
all the rest of the meters in, but what about the software and that? Could you get this up and running as your first time of use customer? I mean, how far out is the software?
And do it.
I believe so.
Yeah. The software and stuff's already there. The only thing that's holding us back is, like, say, getting the
So
meters
all
in.
you need is the right metering for their hydros and then the communication system.
The communication, the infrastructure we need in first, so.
Yeah, and that we'll be able to pick that up with our first, even our test
Is that a
area.
pilot area?
That'd be cool. Well, if we do one here, it'll pick that up, I'm sure. But anyway,
So
But
that
yeah,
might,
that's-
might be feasible to make that happen.
And just so you know, a lot of times in a power purchase agreement, the metering structure is their requirement. And so it's not a problem, just so we're on the same page. It is not at all a problem that even if we don't have that in, and I can show you projects we have right now. If you say from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m., I'm going to give you 5 cents for January 1st to January 31st, it's usually the customer's responsibility to file the invoice to you. And so what will happen is all of that hours, just like I'm telling you, the 8760, they're just going to send you all the data with an invoice. And then it's also the requirements to make sure that their meter is kept to ANSI standards. So there's a calibration requirement typically every 5 years, depending on the meter.
so they have to send you the information each month.
Yep.
Like I said, we're gonna have that capability, very soon. So I don't know why have them do it, because we want that control the meter, to do low profiling and everything else. You know what I mean? Have that instant reads, all that stuff too. But so.
And you can still install your meter on that side. What I'm saying is they still need to generate an invoice. So even though we may have this meter, we may not have this meter transactionally, this is separate from their bill. So they're going to have to send, just like UAMPS does, right? They're going to send an invoice to us, and if it's our meter, they don't have access to that data, so they actually need to have their own meter data anyway.
If you wanted, you could put 2 meters, theirs and ours, and double check it. That's the good thing about a power purchase agreement. You can set it up any way you want. It's a lot easier than doing a blanket thing that will work for everything.
I agree.
Because we can go negotiate this directly with them and make it work for the 2 of us. Doesn't have to be an open rate schedule that anybody can hop onto.
I agree. I would tell you that what we need from them in order to set the rate, it's very common, 8760 data of their generation. If they can give us that, then we can have Jordan run it against our rates of when it's coming in, and we can say the value of electrons from this time to this time is worth this much. Realistically, this is what it's worth to us. And then we have that base of what is it, because they're only going to be focused on when the water's flowing anyway, but we still ought to need to give them a rate that if, maybe it's only 1 cent, maybe it's 2 cents, right? If it's January, February, March,
Will they be producing
April
it all in
15th,
the
October
winter?
15th is the
So even,
irrigation.
so maybe you don't, it's worth 0. So you go April 15th to October 15th. And then what you'll probably have is we'll probably have that summer, so you'll go April, May, and then when we start getting our peaks in probably June-ish, May, depends on the year, right? I'm assuming you guys get peaks sometimes a little earlier and sometimes a little late. Well, we'll see that in the data, and we can just say, from this date to this date,
It's still a time of day issue too.
for,
For the months they're operating, it's still a time, there's more value during peak time than there is nighttime.
that's exactly right. Yeah, so I'm saying seasonal, we can give them that, and then also hourly. We can say, you get a value of this from 5 to, we'll just say 5 to 9 p.m., and April may be a different value than May, June, July, August, and we can set that up. And like I said, after I can show you the screen and you can see exactly what a billing looks like. But I don't think it's a problem on their side to.
Do we have an
invoice it.
idea what their system looks like? Like, are there generators above the reservoir, or are they going to be below the reservoir? Or if there's going to be a second reservoir, so they can actually deliver it when we need it? Because it sounds.
I believe it's just coming off the pipes and coming a second north through their hydros and dump into the reservoir.
Into the reservoir. So whatever comes trickling down the mountain, then they're going to be generating power at that time. So
They
probably
they get their water from Weaver Basin, so it's.
So it's coming from the Weber Basin Aqueduct down into the reservoir, and they're going to generate with it right before it hits the reservoir.
Exactly.
so they can't turn that off though on demand. They have to just keep it flowing, and so they probably won't be able to. It'll be the same amount of power, probably 24/7 during that season.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're right. So it sounds like we have a general consensus on certain things. So let me just make sure we do it, and then if not, then let's talk through it. But it sounds like we're all in agreement that we should treat Weber or the hydro project as its own project and negotiate the rates. Is that fair to say just on that portion?
I would say that's fair.
Okay.
And based on our assumptions that it's a continual flow, we treat it like a base load power plant.
So is everyone okay with that? If they send us the 8760, we can determine the value, but since it is 24/7 and a base load, the value would be more than intermittency, right? Because it's going to be running 24/7. Is that fair?
I have to find out exactly, like you said, what the flow pattern is. But he said pretty much during the summertime that it's running full board, 24/7 when everybody's irrigating.
But you're only supposed to be using it between
Oh, that's a fair point.
from 10 in
good
the morning
point.
till 6 at night.
Well, that's the reservoir
It's not
side.
supposed to be running.
That's the reservoir side. So they're
Fill
dumping
it.
continuously, filling up their battery, generating the electricity on the line side, so to speak, and
That's a
then
good question.
the customers drain it off when they're allowed.
And I don't know if Weber will let them vary when they take it. And I don't know how quickly they can refill their reservoir, if it's, I have no
Yeah.
idea how
Well,
how
what
that
I
is.
asked
That's
him.
something
He said it's pretty much running full out all summer
all the
long.
time, all day long.
Yeah.
So that does sound like a base load resource that it would be then.
And I think that's probably a clarification. So if we could just ask them for an 8760, and then I think what we'd also want to do is we'd want to know what happens if there are water restrictions put in place. So, if it's to John's point, is that if it's on the line side or on the load side of where you're located, if you're on the line side where we're supposed to take it up, where people are supposed to be using that, then you may actually see not those benefits. You may actually see that people can't water until, maybe it's, I can't remember when they put restrictions in, if it's 7
After
or 8
6 p.m.,
o'clock.
I think.
Yeah. So you may see it as not a benefit in those years.
Well, unless we, like you're talking about, change the price during those hours, that would incentivize them to run during those hours.
Right.
Yeah.
And that 8760 will tell us, right? He'll be able to give us this is when, basically all he's going to say is if, for example, it was 100 kW, all it would say is January 1st at midnight, I would run 100 kW. And then January 1st at 1 a.m., I would do 100 kW. So then you just do that for every hour. And like I said, there's 8,760 points. This is very common, by the way. We're not asking them to do anything crazy. They would just give us those points, and basically they would just go from April 15th, it'd be 0 and 0. From April 15th prior and October 15th after, it'd be 0. And then they would just go April 15th at midnight, this is what we anticipate. And they would just give us that data, and then we can make that evaluation.
Yeah, and if it's a flat line,
Then
we decide, do we give them, if they can't increase production over our peak, then it's a base load resource, and there is no added value over peak because we're taking it all day long, all night long. So I would not give them a different rate over peak if it's a base load.
It's not that big of a system. I told you, right? It's starting out with 4 kW.
Oh,
and then
okay.
max build that when they have all of it, it's going to be 24 is all. So it's not.
Okay.
It's not a big.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah.
The only suggestion I would make is a default clause. So usually what happens, what I've seen in agreements is they're very optimistic to tell you that it's going to produce X. So let's just use 4 kW for an example. We go structure all of the rates around 4 kW, and the probability that it actually hits what they say it's producing. I mean, if you look at the history just of geo alone, every geothermal facility has went through probably at least one bankruptcy of some point because they've not performed what they said. So just for protection, what I would tell you is if you could set a default clause that if it doesn't hit these rates for a consecutive amount of years, then that leaves you back to renegotiating. So that's what I would suggest.
I think if we can define the resources, like this hydro, if it ends up being a base load, then we value it, whatever we would buy power from UAMPS, maybe plus a little more because we're not paying into the UAMPS pot. So it would be worth more than the UAMPS power. And if it ends up being a peaker type resource, then we value it even higher and plus a little bit more than what we'd be buying from UAMPS.
Right.
And we just kind of go down the line and define it that way.
So would it be fair to say that right now we'd say it's going to be an independent agreement? They file the 8760. Our action would be to maybe, if Bruce, if you can distribute that, our action would say, okay, what do we value this at? Would that be fair for our action for this as of right now? Or is there more that you're hoping to get out of the discussion?
No, that's good.
Okay.
I would like to get your recommendation on what you think is a fair rate based on, is it a base load resource or does it have some peaking ability, which it doesn't sound like it does. So then I just come up with a flat rate recommendation.
Yeah, and I think to that point too, I'd like to see what your thoughts were around inflation. So this is always a big conversation as well as what do we anticipate inflation will be. So if you're going to sign a 20-year agreement, then is that 20-year flat? Is that 20-year with inflation? You know, does it inflate? They call it, an inflator. Is it a 1%? Is it 2%? What do you anticipate a fair number would be? I don't know that either.
I think we'd want to base it off of whatever rates are a percentage of rate. If it's 100%, the going rate or 105% or 95%. That way, as our rate structure changes, we evaluate it every couple of years and our rates change, then all these power purchase agreements would change accordingly.
Right. I agree.
All of our other power purchase agreements don't have a built-in adjustment, do they? Hunter and all those, I mean, they do increase slightly because of your maintenance costs might go up as they get older. But they also drop off when the debt service is paid off.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we need to automatically build in something, I don't know.
Well, something in effect like that contract said, it's reviewed periodically or whatever,
Yeah.
The review periodically, and I'm talking more template, right? Not them specifically. It seems like they're building this regardless of what we decide here, right? The review periodically will cause, if we ever go to a third party and we say we do want to incentivize, it will cause people to not invest because you're taking long-term debt. So if this customer was to take a long-term debt on 20 years, the reason for the inflator is to determine, and it's no different than Hunter. All they're really doing is they're getting enough members on there so that they can give you a flat rate until the debt service is gone. And then what they do is then they end up owning the asset. The debt service is gone, so you can get a reduced rate. In a third-party independent financial market, we're not asking to own the asset at the end of year 20, but you are asking for a 20-year deal. So what's happening is, if you only amortize for 5 years, then what they have to do is you will get nobody to invest for those 5 years, or the rates have to be extremely high, because as an investor you have to say, can I get my debt coverage out in 5 years? So if you put that in there, you will get, just being candid, you will get nobody that will be willing to take that risk of, well, what if rates drop to 1 cent? Nobody, no banker will put that down. Just so the long and short of that would be is I would probably say this is a 20-year deal, and we can decide what the inflator is. It either needs to be fixed or at a slight percentage. And fixed isn't unfair. It's just, can they economically make it work with the rates that we're going to give them for a 20-year period? That's really what they're going to have to look at. But that's going to come in your recommendation. If you say, hey, look, let's just make this easy. I'm trying to remember, I believe it's Lehigh Power, and in a feed-in tariff scenario. What's a little different than Lehigh versus us is, and I'm talking specifically our commercial rate versus their commercial rate. We've left our rates with market. So, for example, if our commercial rates inflate, then that customer is going to get that benefit of inflation, and the power is going to go up, right? Lehigh Power has said, nope, we are going to leave this rate at this rate. This is the rate, and what they've said is, in a feed-in tariff is, this is the rate, you can challenge this rate, but this is the rate for the next 20 years as you sign up. And then what they say is, in the feed-in tariff world, is every year we can look at it one time in every year. But that's for our case. So long story short, I don't think there's a right answer. I think it's just what your recommendation would be as far as what's easiest for, does inflation actually help us? Does it not help us? What should we do for billing? I think the other thing to remember is anything in a power purchase agreement is the strength of this document is the bankability of this document, right? So the stronger this document is, the higher probability that you're going to get that you'll have people that will actually invest in Kaysville for a third-party project. So, bringing it back, you'll distribute the 8760. We're going to negotiate it on a separate basis, and then did we decide that we want them that we're installing 2 meters? Is that what we decided? They would install a meter and we'd install a meter?
We can do it however we want. I just threw that out as an option.
I think most of the time they do that anyway, don't they? On those kind of things, you'd think they'd have their own.
It's not uncommon.
Are they going to have multiple generation stations? So we're talking quite a few meters? Or is this all being produced in one
I believe it's
spot?
all going to go through 1 meter,
Okay.
1 spot, 1 meter. There's
With
like they're gonna
multiple.
add on as it through
Okay.
the years. So
So that's not a huge investment then, if it can all go through the same meter.
But also, I agree with you, Alan, as your comment was, how are we going to review their invoice if we don't have anything that's ours? So I would recommend 2 meters, just so we can review what they're invoicing us on.
Yeah.
Sure.
Or, well, and my thought is, if we have our own time of use meter, what do we need to worry about them having a meter? Or, they can have their meter do what they want with it, but not for the purpose of invoicing us. It just seems like a separate process that we don't need if we already have our own meter, our own time of use meter. Why do we need any information from them? You know what I mean? It just seems like it's just kind of a redundant and more work, more paperwork, unless I'm missing something there. If we have our own meter, what do we need their meter for? You know what I mean? It's for our information.
Well, you make them do the work. And we can just
Well, but
check it if
our-
we question it, but
I don't know. It's just easier, especially with going to the AMI where it goes directly into the billing system and we have control over it. You know what I mean? Instead of you're just going to cause paperwork.
But I guess the
Why?
question is, how are they going to invoice us if they don't have their own meter?
They don't have to invoice us. We send them a bill, or we already have their information from the meter. We send them, their
check.
check every month.
I'm gonna say that I think if you flip this discussion and you have a banker sitting on the other side, I think they're gonna say exactly what you just said. But, well, how do I know what the check that you're sending me is right?
And that's where, like I said, most
So I
households, if
think
they want to know
too-
that, then they do their own meter for their own purpose, for their own benefit. I don't know. I just don't see the need for
2
them
meters.
to invoice us. We have the meter. We have all the information. Like we do now with all other agreements, and every meter in the city, we have control over it. We have the readings. They get
What if you
credit.
make a mistake? How does that happen? I'm just trying to think worst case, right? So let's say that you send out. This is the benefit of having them invoice versus you invoice. If you make the mistake on sending the invoice out, and believe it or not, I actually took a picture, and I can show you guys this. But I have $11,000.
Then it gets caught the next month or whatever at the worst case scenario. So it's not like it's serious. You didn't have to pay that money, did you?
I didn't. I called them.
See, so and we have the readings. So each month, when we have AMI, at any minute you want, you can push a button and get a reading. So, you know what I mean?
and they would be able to see it too.
Yeah.
So they could access it to verify if they question our
They can look
Payment, I
they can
guess,
look at
right.
the meters available for them to look at, anytime they want. Also, like I say, I just don't want to put in another process that we don't have manpower to do. I just don't see a need for it.
Or leave it up to them if they want to install their own meter to verify.
Yeah,
they
that's fine.
could
They
if
usually
they-
do on something
So,
like that.
then that way, say, we can use we'll bill you off our own meter. If you want to verify the billing at any time, you'll need to install a new meter or something like that. Your own personal meter.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you.
Exactly.
All
That's
right.
why it's
This is why we're doing what we're doing. See that? 12,036.61.
That's why she has to hand do them.
I know. It's because if it goes all the way backwards. So it went all the way backwards around from zero.
It didn't, yeah. The billing system doesn't understand
So.
negative numbers.
Right. So, okay. So I think we're all in agreement then. We're going to install our AMI meter, just one meter. If they want to install their meter for verification, then that's their responsibility. Otherwise, we're just going to send them a check every month. Is that what we want to do?
Yeah, I think that we've done everything else, so I think that we should
Okay.
settle each month.
Okay. Perfect. Is there anything else on the power purchase agreement you wanted to cover?
No, that's great.
Okay. How about the interconnection standards? So is that coupled with that? Do we still want to have an interconnection standards, or is that where we would like to defer to, IEEE, and I'm kind of getting into some other things. What is your thoughts? What would you hope to do there?
Yeah, I don't have to think about it a little bit more now that we've separated that,
Okay.
back to just a regular, feed-in tariff and not the power purchase agreement for everyone, to open it up. So,
Okay.
I mean, there has to be standards, but how in-depth do we want to go?
And I think just out of conversation, I know, John, you did a lot of research on this last time and presented. Do you have a recommendation of what, so this kind of goes with penetration, PV penetration. This comes down to, what standards, they started, I remember in your presentation, they started at IEEE and it was 15%, then they jumped. Do you have some thoughts on, do you recommend it being 15%? Should we start conservative? It's also going back to the manpower. If we create our own standard and then we're outdated and then we constantly are updating it, is there a source? I know we brought 1547 in. Is there thoughts, Alan, John, that you guys have on this?
Well, 15%, there's already systems out there that are well above that, mine included.
Yeah.
There's been times of day, doesn't happen very often, but 15% on a 50 kilowatt distribution transformer is 7,500 watts.
Yep.
And there's been times where I've just brief periods, and it's always in April is like the worst case scenario, over 10,000 watts. I've seen my system backfeed, and so we're already exceeding that, but it's not blowing anything up either. And just going off of the Hawaii example, they actually that rule of thumb, that 15% rule of thumb, is a very conservative general rule, and they actually studied it a little more and determined that they could actually say up to 250% of the transformer's rating backfeeding, because that's not going to happen. It'll happen almost never, and the transformers have enough, oil and margins in them to handle brief things like that.
I thought it changed when they were getting into that high percentage. It was not based on the transformer size. It was a different term.
I forget the word they used.
It was based on actual
MDL.
consumption, I think.
Minimum daytime load is what I think
Yeah,
they use.
yeah.
Minimum daytime load. Okay,
So
yeah, I
that's
think you're right.
different than the transformer size.
Okay, you're right. 250% of minimum daytime load.
Because that means they're using some of it before it even hits the transformer.
Okay.
Yeah, here you go.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Yep, 250% of minimum daytime load. So that's kind of a tough thing to kind of arbitrarily come up with, because you could have a house that's, got the air conditioner cranking and hot water heater going, and
But it's minimum.
minimum
So
daytime
now you're
load.
talking April. What's the least amount of power you're using in April, and we'll go 250% of that. So that's not a very big number.
Right, that could even be worse than this 15% one in that
Yeah,
case. If
yeah.
you have a house with very low phantom power draw and everyone's gone, probably 50 watts, the whole house. And
So, yeah, these are two based on two different things, so.
right. Now, I don't know how they define that minimum daytime load, if it's like their minimum peak or like you've got these peaks that happen in the day.
It's the valley.
Yeah.
Minimum daytime load.
That's accurate. It's usually a 5-year average. So usually it's the minimum daytime load in year 1, plus year 2, plus year 3, plus, minus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 averaged out is usually, so that way, if it was just like a weird weather.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So if you're on vacation, that wouldn't count as your minimum daytime load. It would be the average throughout the year.
Well, it's the minimum. Nope, it's the minimum for the year. Alan's dead on. It's the valley of the year. But then the valley of the year prior, the valley of the year prior, the valley of the year prior, and the valley of the year prior, all average just in case you had like a weird weather pattern. Then it would say, if it was 1 kW, 1 kW, 1 kW, 5 kW, and, another 5 kW would be 10, it'd be 13 divided by 5 would be what the MDL would be.
So 250% of that could easily be less than 15%.
It could. Yeah, it
So,
could.
I know it's hard. It's hard to figure out, but in my mind, you step back and look at it going, if we're going to stand by something, I mean, we have the IEEE standard. It's not us guessing or thinking it's okay. The standards are right there.
I believe that you're exactly right. I think that if we started with the standard, this is my thought, is if we started with the standard and then we said, okay, we're open, tell us where we're not. Like if that standard's not perfect, then we could review it after that. But I think just giving us that baseline where somebody else is updating it all the time, I think it's probably a smart move to start in that direction, unless you feel different, John. I know you did all the research, so.
Yeah. So in the study that I looked at for Hawaii, they had, the issue wasn't just one homeowner. It was once you had, one distribution transformer and 3, 4, 5 homeowners, all with solar power on the same transformer, and they were trying to avoid the transformer blowing out, like that. They were having this issue, and that was really what they were trying to prevent was exceeding the backfeed capability of the transformer. And at the substation level, they were actually backfeeding megawatts. The substation itself was actually backfeeding to the other substations, and it actually, obviously they couldn't all do that because there would be nowhere for the power to all go. But one of their they have 4 substations on the island, and one of them was actually backfeeding the other ones.
And that makes the protection scheme really difficult when you have power going both ways. It makes it tough to.
When you get to the relays,
program all
that's
your
why
relay.
that 15% on a circuit too is because of the relays and things being able to handle
Yeah.
that influx.
And that's even a requirement in the permit itself. You have the main breaker of your house, and you can't. Let's see. It's really counterintuitive. Like if you have a I don't even want to bring it up. I don't think I understand it fully, but 150 amp breaker on a house, you actually had to make it smaller if you add more solar. It was really counterintuitive.
So it's the gas can analogy. So if you fill up a gas can, and say you buy a 5-gallon gas can, the bus bar rating of that gas can is 5 gallons. But if you fill it up, what it says in that code is it says that it really holds 6 as an emergency. So what it was saying is, if you feed, let me think of the best way to say this. If you feed 5 gallons from the utility, then it allows 1 gallon from your solar. So, and if you swap that, right, if you put more solar, if you were to put 4 gallons of solar,
You have to
you'd
have
only
less
get-
from the utility.
That's right.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So already the solar array is protected at the residential level. We would just have to determine a similar thing at the distribution level and the substation level.
So let me ask this question, and I flip it. Are you opposed if we put in if we said, let's stay with IEEE as a standard, and then we reviewed it on a case-by-case, because we're going to have it, right? We already have homes that are filing applications that have, basically what we're saying is anything over 7.5 kW, not saying that we couldn't do that, but I'm saying, would you be opposed if we just said, hey, this standard is the standard we're going to use, and then we allow exceptions, or what would you propose on that?
I'm kind of confused what that 15% means. Is that per customer on the distribution transformer, or is that total going to the distribution transformer?
So it goes.
Because if it's total, then one homeowner with 7.5 kilowatts has just blanked everyone else out, locked everyone out. No one else can get solar in that neighborhood.
Well, they can, but they'd have to pay to upgrade the transformer.
They'd have to pay to upgrade it. But then someone gets a 2 kilowatt one, and now the 65 kilowatts too small, and it doesn't make sense in my mind why that 15% was chosen when you've got a 50,000 watt transformer, and just in my mind, that transformer should be able to work either way, just like any other transformer. I can get a 500 watt transformer for my home for some project, and I can hook it up one way and run my microwave oven, and as long as I don't exceed the power rating, but then I can turn it the other way and make it into an arc welder. And as long as I don't exceed the power rating.
There's a lot more to it than that, though. It's power quality issues and things. It's not just blanket, capacity.
There is power quality issues, but as long as your inverters are producing clean power,
I think it's the influx, like you say, in the April when everything's bumping onto the system. It's not all anyway. There's other factors there.
Yeah, and I think in addition, there's a risk of, and why they flipped to an MDL is because of, let's say you have 2 homes, and let's just say that each home has 7.5 and 7.5, so we're 30%, right?
yeah.
I think the question is, well, what is the daytime load, right? So 2 homes aren't the same, because this homeowner here may be home all day, and so the effective power going back on that grid, the MDL, would be substantially lower. You think that would be substantially higher if that individual was home all day versus if this individual was not there. So I think that's why they
Right.
deferred. But was there a study? Let me say it this way: is there something that we could hang our hat on besides in our own individual research, right? And I'm not saying that we don't, but in order to get that research, we have to have a baseline. Is there something that they would say, hang your hat on this number? Do you know if there was if we were to say adopt 250 of MDL as an example, did they have like a standard that they keep up to date, or how would we incorporate that? What would you recommend? I currently don't know, so I'm just...
I just don't know where to begin, really.
Okay.
And then adding array orientation just complicates everything even more. You've got an east-facing array, and then it compounds your problem, and maybe even that may actually be a solution. One neighbor is east-facing, one is west-facing, one is south-facing, so their arrays are all turning on at different times a day,
Right.
and then it doesn't become a problem. And I don't know, maybe the answer just solves itself.
And would you say this, if we started, would you be opposed to this? Let me say this. If we adopted the IEEE standard and said, use this as a base, however, we'll start doing load studies, And then if we find, very similar to this, right, is if we find that we are not experiencing it, just like our net metering, we could adjust and adjust and adjust and adjust as we move forward. Would that be a fair process, or you guys tell me what you think?
I think if we're sticking with a national standard, that's a pretty safe place to be.
Right.
I guess I'd ask the follow-up question. A question would, how would we measure that to determine if someone's in violation? Like, we don't have that ability yet without time of use metering. So we could adopt this standard once we have time of use.
The 15%?
Yeah,
Would that just be off of what their system size is and what size the transformer is?
but we don't know how
Doesn't
much
matter
is
what they're producing.
backfeeding. We know it could backfeed.
Just have
If-
to go off the rated value. That's the only thing you could do it off of. You can't do it off of, like
Yeah.
you said, off
But if,
an actual number.
like, if they're running Bitcoin miners in their basement, then they're probably consuming it all, or consuming a large portion of it.
But then they might go away tomorrow too. So
That's true.
That's why you have to go off of what they put in
Mm-hmm.
and what our transformer size is, and that's the only way I can see to keep it, keep it fair.
And it's a tough calculation, just with the data I've collected from my own house. I have about 11.4 kilowatts of solar, and it was a really unique period of the day where it was really cold and cloudy, and then all of a sudden the clouds broke, but it was still cold and it was sunny, and we were also consuming very little power that day. We just no one was home and nothing was being consumed, and all of a sudden the solar kicks on and we're backfeeding. I think our record, it was actually backfeeding 11,000 watts, so almost the rating of the entire array, but it was just for seconds, and then it quickly dipped down as the panels warmed up and leveled off to like 10,000 watts or something, and then it got cloudy again and dropped way down, but I've never seen it that high ever since then, but I just don't know how we would, because right now we have the 15 kilowatt maximum system size, but then if we go with this 15% number, then we've cut that in half. We say you can only install 7.5 kilowatts, because there's a chance you could backfeed the whole thing.
No, they have the option to upgrade the transformer. That's what they'd have to do.
And one clarification, 7.5 kW AC. So 7.5 usually has an overdrive on the DC. So you would,
Right.
possibly 11 or 12 DC, right? So you'd be, because you usually overdrive up to 30. Do you have in-phase? Is that what you have?
I've got just series inverters.
Okay. So, for example, I have a series inverter. I have 6.2 kW DC, but I have 5 kW AC.
And we only try to go
Right.
off the AC amount.
Yeah, so
That's what we try to.
So you would have
Right.
that additional. It still probably wouldn't get you to the 15. You'd have to probably update, but it
Right.
would get you closer. It'd get you probably, 7.5 divided by 1.3.
So is our 15 kW limit AC or DC?
AC. Because that's what we care about. Back on our line is the AC.
But we sized the array with DC though. The 15. I thought the 15 kW was based on the size of the array, so it would be a DC. But then the actual AC power produced would be less than 15. But I thought we were limiting it on the DC side.
I hope we are. I like that better.
10.7 would be approximately, depending on how you overdrive it, you'd be 10 or 11 kW. 10.7 is a 30% overdrive on DC.
So you're saying an average would be 30% difference
Yeah.
between AC and DC?
Yeah, that's accurate. So even though we're talking AC, solar, you'd say, you could put approximately 11 kW without needing a transformer upgrade. And that would make this really easy when it goes through, right? Is if you see above 10 kW, you really look at it. Anything, if there's no other solar on there.
I would like to have somebody verify that question. What is our policy say? What is our maximum system size? Is it?
Doesn't specify this. I don't think it specifies, but it's always my assumption it was the AC, because that's what we go by.
I think that's a fair question.
But the panels are all rated at DC.
It's very common that it's mixed up everywhere.
But we get the AC. We don't get the DC.
Yeah, I know what you get, but
That's all
what
we
are
care
we
about.
allowing the maximum panel size?
I thought that was 15 kilowatts was the DC, 15 kilowatt of panels.
That's what I had assumed too. But if you're telling people AC, then they can put bigger, a larger system in than 15 kW.
Not AC.
I know.
We're talking AC. That's what we get back to our meter. That's what the limit is. That's what. Not DC.
So you just let them put bigger panel sizes in.
Not above 15 AC. That's
Well,
maximum.
let's say 15 DC.
We don't care about DC. It's not.
Yeah, we do.
We don't get DC on our lines. Let's put it that way.
I think the net metering agreement's set up for kilowatt of the solar array. I think it
Just says
mentions
KW,
solar
doesn't
array.
specify, but it's AC.
Well, that may be, let's verify what's actually in writing.
It says KW. It does not say. It does not
But
specify.
is it referring to the
AC.
KW of the panels or the KW of what they deliver to the grid?
It doesn't specify. It just says 15 KW.
In
15
reference to
15 AC.
what?
What's that?
In reference to what? 15 KW
15 KW.
delivered to the system or 15 KW panel size?
15 KW.
Could you
AC.
forward a copy of that to us sometime the next couple of days of that policy?
Net meter agreement is online too. But I
I'll
can send it to
pull it
you.
up.
But like I say, it doesn't specify, but we've always assumed it's AC.
I-
That's what we get.
I think we can.
I recall-
I think we can clarify this pretty easy and just put it in. We did that. We can just push it out there, right? Through what do? We did a common questions, right, on the net metering. So I think we can just answer it of, if it says KW and it's KWAC or DC, whichever way we want. I think we can just push it out and say we can just list it as, and I think that's probably an action we can take is. Should this be AC or should this be DC? When in our discussions, is it 15 AC or DC?
DC.
So let's leave it there and let's distribute that question, and then we can look at the net metering. So going back just to the commercial interconnection standards, I'm just going to push this through, and maybe we need to leave it for next time. But you tell me. Would there be opposition to adopting today, John, the IEEE standard, or would you like one more month to say, let's think through that?
I'm not opposed to adopting it, but I haven't wrapped my brain around what it means, what that would entail, and the implications of that. Because I'm concerned that it would limit system sizes below 15 kW. Because you gave that 30%. You gave that 30% number, and that might be a good average because you've got different roof pitches and orientations and shading and thing, and maybe that's a good rule of thumb. But if we're concerned about actual energy getting on the grid, there's going to be cases where it's going to be a lot higher than that because there's time of year where the sun is at the perfect angle for my roof pitch and right there, and the temperatures are just right, and I'm not consuming power, and my inverter is about 97% efficient, and so it ends up being closer to 3% in that case.
So yes, it definitely, let me just clarify, it definitely will it will not limit the size, it'll just force an upgrade to the transformer if they went over approximately 11 kW DC. So what I think would be helpful for us is, in this, is if maybe there's an addendum that somebody publishes on top of IEEE, because I think at the end of the day, I don't know that we have the time, being candid, right, to keep updating the IEEE standard, but if there's somebody that's maybe a little less conservative, and if there was something that we could hang our hat on that said, no, we're going to do this, and then they're going to keep it up to date, if you could come back with that, I think we could have that dialogue. Does everyone feel okay with that?
I'm worried that we're maybe taking the wrong approach with this. Like, maybe the better answer would be to say, you shall not backfeed more than this amount. And then it's going to, because you're going to have customers that are going to have gigantic solar array, but they're going to have a battery storage, and they're going to have electric cars that with charging stations that you can buy today that say, I will only deliver enough power to the car as the house isn't consuming this minute. And so you could have ways around not backfeeding.
So right now we are saying that. We're saying a cap of 15.
Okay.
And then we're saying you can't net meter, or currently grandfathered you couldn't net meter. The next schedule, we're saying you can't send an excess of electrons more than you produce. And if you do, we have a financial. So this is more, instead of financial, it's more
energy.
More real electrons is what I'm concerned about. Is the same as the study, right? Is blowing it up. What happens when we send those actual electrons, physical electrons, not billing, but physical electrons. So I think anything you can come prepared with to help us switch from this. And I think we have good resources. They have to have justification. I'm assuming that they're not going to take the risk of blowing up their own transformers either. So I think if we could just find out.
But I think this could be more restrictive than that.
It definitely can be. And if whatever that study is, if there's something there, maybe they've already went through where we were, right? They're hanging their hat on something. So if we could get what they're hanging their hat on, I think it would be helpful for us.
And it may be something that is more applicable to their situation and not so applicable to us, though.
That's true. That's fair.
I have completely different climates and different load patterns, so I don't know.
You're exactly right. That's fair. That's really fair, because, we have the winter months and they don't, right?
They have milder summers and very, very mild winters.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's table that. John, I'm going to keep it on here for next time as a work item. If you'll just come,
I'll go back and look at that again.
Okay, I think all of us are in agreement that we want to do it right. We just don't know what right is there. So anything else on, and those two are lumped together, was interconnection standards or backfeed. And then I think we've already addressed commercial feed-in tariff. Is there anything that we wanted to discuss in letter D? Okay. We can do the call to public.
Want to go outside and look for someone?
Yeah, if you would. The one last thing before we adjourn, I wanted to discuss was just with attendance. Do we want to hold the July meeting? Do you guys feel like it's I feel like there's action. I feel like we're making progress, but with the summer months, is that something we want to?
Well, considering our track record of being 3 members, it would be July is probably going to be another tough month, and I hate for us to be making all the decisions and them being left out.
Is there anything really pressing that you need to get answers for?
No, like, if we can, what we talked about
thank you.
tonight on these commercial deals, if we can just, have some dialogue between us, as far as, making sure that's, everybody's on the same page and, we get somewhere, because
Can't wait 2
every
months.
time after we have these meetings, I get calls from these guys across the street, and I get calls from,
We took care of them though, didn't we?
Well, we can't do anything until we have an agreement and everything for them to sign. We're not letting anybody do anything until we have all these things signed and passed by the city council, so we can't do anything until until we have new agreements and everything for commercial. And then all that has to be taken to city council too, even the rates and all that stuff too.
So we come up with the rate policy. We're just lacking the agreement for
Yeah.
the commercial.
Yeah, we don't have an agreement, or if we're gonna have, interconnection standards, all those things have to be, all has to be an agreement, has to be in
So
the policies.
have we been given an agreement, draft agreement?
Nope, we hadn't decided where
So
we're
we're
going.
waiting on you. You're not waiting on us then.
No, I was waiting on, trying to get these answers so we know what kind of agreements to write up.
So just so we're clear, right? We're going to keep the PPA separate. We're going to write up the feed-in tariff for commercial customers with the rates, right? And then the interconnection standard. So that sounds like that will slow us there. We need to have some answers. So maybe it's through email, or we can meet next month even. It's
Well,
fine.
we can do a lot of it through email and stuff, I think, but let's see. As long as we throw out like those 3 documents I gave you, if we just get rid of take out that power purchase agreement, right? The interconnection standards, that basically covered most of those items, didn't it? I mean, right? The feed-in tariff and then the interconnection standards, those two.
Yeah, the feed-in
okay.
tariff I had like 4 comments on that.
Yeah, with the changes to that, we'll get that changed and then send that back out too. But we can look at it closer to see. I don't know. Was there anything in the interconnection agreement?
I didn't make it all the way through the other 2. They were
Okay.
fairly
Well,
long
let's-
documents, and I didn't.
Yeah, let's don't worry about the PPA then. Just if you guys can look at the interconnection standards, see if there's anything you want to change. We'll verify those 2 things. I'll write up or kind of change, to kind of plagiarize our net meter agreement now, and kind of change a few things and say, and then in that refer to, the feed-in tariff policy and the interconnection standards.
Okay, so you're going to send, so let's make sure I'm on the same page. You're going to send a net metering, we'll call it, what should we call that? A commercial generation agreement. Is that what we should call that? And then that will refer to the commercial feed-in tariff and the interconnection standards. So there'll be
Yeah.
3 documents now that we'll get.
Oh, yeah, right.
Okay.
So, yeah, if you guys look through those, and if there's any changes you would like to make on either of those 2 documents, let me know, and we can change that. Then now I can start working on, I can write that up, and then I'll get that to you, and you guys
Okay.
can review that and see if there's anything else you'd like to see on that, or.
And the interconnection standards, so that I'm not mistaken, would that replace the 1547, the IEEE?
I'm not sure that it goes to that detail in that. I don't believe it.
Okay, so maybe
Well, and
maybe
I don't know. We have to look at it closer because maybe in all those references, because it has a bunch of references in there. We'll have to look at it closer and make sure that it covers that 1547.
okay.
'Cause it talks about complying to these standards. So we'll have to look. It might have that
It
already.
might
in
have
there.
something in there.
Okay.
We'll have to look at that a little closer. So
Okay.
part of our review.
I think it was left blank, wasn't it?
I can't
I feel
remember. I have to
What
look at
day
it
did
closer.
we have scheduled for the July meeting? Because it wasn't the first Tuesday, because
July
that was
10th.
the 10th. I thought I had it in my phone, but I don't.
July 10th. I'm available then if we decide to meet then.
I'll be in San Francisco.
So if we
On the
you know
10th.
if we can do that, and you know, you guys review that, we'll review that too. Make sure you know that the 1547 is covered in there, and look at those documents. I'll write up the other one. If we can get those, you know, where we all agree, I don't know. Maybe it's just we would get together for lunch or something to you know, do the vote if everybody's all on the same page or something.
Well,
I mean,
if you're going to go to that extent,
Yeah.
you can't do it at lunchtime unless you can do a public notice.
Right, we can
and
do a
it's
public
all-
notice.
So keep that in mind too.
Right.
Or you can also do a shorter version of this meeting, just
Okay.
to address those two issues. And then you
Can
can
do that.
Okay. Okay, so,
Also.
yeah, however logistically works out.
so let me make sure I'm on the same page. So there's three things that I'm gonna, just three items that I think is still outstanding. Is we do have the PPA. And the way that what we're gonna do is we're gonna review that with the 8760 to see values, which I think can be done through email as well. We're gonna do the max system size, AC or DC. We're gonna solve that issue. And then we have the commercial generation agreement, and this is all one, feed-in tariff interconnection, and that's just one item. So those are the three outstanding items that we need to resolve, correct?
And then I just thought of one more thing that we haven't addressed yet. We talked about earlier on the fees for residential. We need to have a fee schedule for the commercial too, because the meters are a lot more expensive and there's a lot more.
Has anyone looked at that at all?
No, haven't looked at that in detail yet, but yeah, I mean
Can you
Meters
get the
about
similar
$400.
cost that you did for the residential, so that gives us a starting point at
yeah,
least?
exactly. We can adjust the meters and maybe the amount of time that
Yeah.
something like that takes in comparison with that. So
The meter's more expensive just because they're a three-phase meter?
yes,
Okay.
about 4 times the cost.
Hmm.
3 to 4, about $400.
So let's not decide tonight. Here's what I'll do. I'll send out the agenda with these 4 items. I'm going to have PPA. I'll have the max system size. I'll have the commercial generation agreement, and I'll have all of these listed. And then I'll have the fee schedule for commercial. So those will be the 4 items. I definitely won't be here on the 10th. I know that. So what we'll need to do is we have to, with Stacy, when are you leaving?
The 2 weeks before, so.
So if we let you know by next week, will that give you enough time? So we have 1 week. I'll send this out, the agenda, and then if there's going to be others here, then I say we hold it. Is kind of the consensus. You're available, John? Are you available?
I'll be here.
Alan?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So then I'd say if there's going to be someone besides myself, then I'd say we just push through these 4 issues on the 10th. And if not, then I say if we need to set up a separate meeting or solve it through email. I think 2 of them should be pretty easy to resolve. 2 of them may, the agreements we may not, like the interconnection standards, we may have to just quickly get together on that. Does that sound like a fair approach on?
Well, and you can ask if the 10th doesn't work, what is there a day that would work?
Okay. Okay, and then just so that we're on the same page, the August event, is that August 7th? Is that the date that we're planning?
Wasn't the 7th, was it,
August,
Stacy? Was the
what event in August?
August, the thing in Logan?
Oh, UM's? UM
It's the-
retreat is August
It's like the 3rd week. It's always the 3rd week.
It's the
So
13th. It's August 13th, I think, August 13th.
be
It's
that
a
Sunday
2-3 day?
Yeah,
Sunday,
through-
Monday,
Sunday
Tuesday?
night through Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
June is usually what seems like that's what.
We're so close to that, we would just drive up each time, or are they actually putting us up for that?
Yeah,
We will have to verify that, and
Yeah.
we'll let you know.
Okay.
I don't know what, we'll we'll let you know what they decide that they're willing to do.
Okay.
How's that?
Okay.
Is it fair to have a meeting and the retreat, or what would you like to do there? The meeting would be on the 7th. The retreat starts the 13th, you said?
Yeah. As soon as we get the invites, we'll get those out to you guys too, so you can plan, which
Okay.
days. 'Cause
Okay.
It seems like most stuff's Monday and Tuesday.
Okay.
Then we have our board meeting on Wednesday, so.
I would like to shoot for a meeting anyway, just so we can knock out these commercial things. I didn't realize we had commercial customers waiting on all this still. So I thought we'd already put everything to bed, but yeah, if they're
Yeah.
still, if they're not
Still
able to
always.
install, let's meet and get these knocked out so they can move forward.
Okay. Okay. So I'll just take a look at those days. I'll just email everyone. These are the 4 agenda items. We'll shoot for July 10th and make sure we have enough people. And then if not, we'll pick another day. And then we'll do August 7th and then have discussion on the 13th.
Okay.
So any other items that we need to talk about?
You're talking about the ideas for upcoming meetings?
Sure. We're not going through them, but if we wanted to add or adjust them, this is what I have on the list. So
Okay.
if there's others to add, absolutely want to.
I don't have anything else to add, but I really like the idea of just installing some battery storage at one of the substations. Maybe 5 of those commercial Tesla Powerwalls, or something that size, and just as a pilot program to. And if it ends up being a real cost-effective thing, we'll do more of it. And if it ends up being stupid, we'll not do it again. But I think that's just let's tinker. Let's experiment. And I know we have a long history with being with UAMPS, and we really want to continue that relationship. But I think being more independent as a utility, as these aging generating facilities are taken offline, if we have the ability to provide our own peak, we don't have to sign up for new ones as often. And I think it'd just be worth pursuing that.
So I'm going to say this. I personally have a conflict with this, but I will, at Hunt Electric, right? But I will tell you this, that I can get you the audience and I can get you a location that will do a battery storage. So if we were to say that we wanted to do what we're doing with hydro and samples battery storage, I have a location, I have a customer, I have an agreement, and I would be happy to share it with, the team here.
You're talking like a personal, a PPA with a customer?
That's accurate. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a commercial customer in Kaysville that would do this agreement. They've already talked about it. They're willing to install it's called a capacity agreement. So the benefit of a capacity agreement is that this is a weird concept, but you can send power. A lot of people think of battery storage as I'm getting rid of intermittency, but it's really, as a utility, what's really special is you actually can dump loads too. So you can emergency or plan. You can actually use that battery. If it's a capacity agreement, you can actually send electrons and store them there for a fee. So it works both ways, right? You can store there for a fee, or you can take power from there for a fee. So if it is of interest, I have all of that. And I'm working with this customer in another location currently, and I think that they would be very interested. So,
Well, I think customers should approach the city anyway as far as power purchase agreements and doing that as a power purchase agreement. But I was thinking more along the lines of Kaysville City actually owning one of these and piloting it out at the substation.
That's going to have to be something that we budget for.
Right.
It's not in this year's budget, so we'd have to have a number to make that a line item in the budget next
Sure.
year. And get city council approval on it. And I'm not sure how staff feels about that, but.
Hey, if the numbers work, that's, it's all about cost, so.
Well, just like we budgeted for the time of use meters, we said, I think it was 2.8 million spread over, I forget if it was 5 or 10 years that we spread it over, but the way our rate structure is, it captures all those costs. And maybe we look at this next year or the year after and say, hey, let's a couple $1 million spread over the next 8 to 10 years and see how it changes things. Anyway, I'm just interested in that one. It's just a really interesting idea. I think about the outage we had last year and how that, and granted a bank of battery, a 1 million watt bank of batteries isn't going to make a dent, but maybe it would allow it gets our foot in the door of having emergency power that just could be there.
So I'll tell you this, and if you want to spearhead it and come to me, then I'm happy to, just because of my conflict, right? But I would just tell you this: if Kaysville is interested with the customer with zero capital, where they wouldn't have to inject capital, very similar to the hydro facility, I have all that. And the reason why I know I have that is because they have multiple facilities, and we are doing that in other municipal districts as sample projects right now. So if it's of interest, I'm going to let you spearhead it, and I will provide you whatever you need to come here. So
okay,
it's pretty fun. And the answer, the disadvantage of what you're saying is, in concept it works, but it won't work without tax incentive because of the life expectancy of the battery. So you need to bundle it with renewable to receive the tax benefit, and you really need the third-party investor. And that's why I was saying that length of that agreement's important. You have to have that piece because you run the risk of your warranties and your bankability. After you go out so long, and these things are rated by cycles, if you go out too long, you're not going to be able to find a bankable partner that will take the tax value out, bring your price down, and make the economics work. So I think you have to. I think you have to go to a third party to make it financially make sense. So,
okay.
Is there anything else that I need to add to the upcoming meetings? Okay. So
I do have a question. Where are we with the system study?
I've been on vacation for a couple weeks. I do have a contact person. His name's David South. I talked to him a little bit before I left on vacation. I am in the process of talking to him. We're going to sit down and meet. So when that comes available, I'll give out an invitation to anybody that wants to come.
Okay.
Keep in mind, if we have 3, we're going to have to do a public notice, so maybe if a lot of people are interested in coming to that, maybe select 2 to represent Power Board, so we don't have to do a public notice and special meeting and all that other fun stuff.
Okay.
I know you're interested in it, and I was going to involve you right from the get-go once we set up. He is working on somewhat what I kind of informed him what you guys wanted, but he wants a little bit more detail on exactly what the study entails. So, yeah, it's close. Like I said, I already talked to him. He's kind of got his people doing a little bit of research, but not until we sit down and review it and go from there.
Okay.
And I believe he called it a load system analysis or something like that when I was kind of explaining, or load flow, I guess is what he said.
Okay.
I'll have to read my notes. They're back of the shop, but I believe that's what he said when I was indicating on we would like capability or substation capability, our main feeders, our wire size and everything else, and that's what he referred it to as load flow analysis study. Yeah. So.
That's a common study.
Okay. Yeah, let me know. I would definitely be interested.
On this discussion items for upcoming meetings, on the number 5 electric cars, I think we could split that into 2 separate categories of customers, cars, and looking at, and maybe this is a question for City Council, looking at getting electric cars for the city, so the city's own vehicles, police force, and things like that. Looking at electric cars and the cost effectiveness of maintenance and fuel and cops being able to pull anyone over because they're driving a Tesla and things like that. A lot of utilities, a lot of cities are looking into these things and just the lifespan of the car and the maintenance. They're going electric for a lot of these things. So.
It's a really good point, and I would just say that if you guys haven't looked, I would strongly recommend looking at what Rocky Mountain Power is doing. There's a lot of things that's going to be coming out, but you're seeing a lot of people move towards electrification. Being on the power board and being, with renewable generation and the declining load profiles, some of these things that you can, take from others, you're seeing a lot of that. So, to your point, maybe there's an electric car incentive and things like that you can actually push, that pushes up, if our load profile is declining, you can push that back out, and you're going to see a lot of press, not just at Rocky Mountain Power, but a lot of utility companies are really pushing car charging stations, those types of things to help bring their revenue numbers back up. So,
an example of that, I was home, this was a couple Saturdays ago, but my solar array generated like 70-something kilowatt hours, and I plugged my car on purpose at 10 a.m. and it charged for about 7 hours, and basically I was 0 watts pushing to the grid for several hours straight, and then I started actually pulling from the grid, and then the car finished charging and then it turned off. So it basically just leveled out my whole load curve, and I put 45 kilowatt hours into my car, and my house, my air conditioning and everything consumed another 15 kilowatt hours, and the house consumed some more, and it ended up being basically a net zero day, but it looked like I was just not home that day. But I was doing all these activities, and it was, to be able to schedule that and have it automatic would just be the ultimate thing to do. I don't know how to do that all yet, but anyway, if we can, as a city, look towards ideas like that, I think that would help out the power company and help out the customers and flatten out the peak of the grid, flatten out the duck curve.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think that this might be something we could look at too. I think there's a lot of incentive dollars. So I know there is. Volkswagen, or VW, right, when they did their scandal, there's dollars out there, and I don't know how Kaysville could get that, but there is money out there that is being used for car charging network, and so you're seeing an I-15 corridor, and you're seeing the I-80 corridor. I think they're going to do a substantial amount through, I don't know the numbers exactly, but all through that whole corridor. So it might be, if we can access that money, it might be something we could offer to our customers to install it, and then we would receive that benefit of extra electrons.
And the city vehicles could use it too. And so instead of having to use city tax money to fill up at the gas station, or at the having to fill our own pumps at the power plant, we'd plug in and charge up the vehicles that way.
Anything
Yeah.
else?
That's all I
Casey
have.
prefers if we stay till 9:30, so if you guys can just
At least.
give me.
Minimum of 9:30.
At least.
Okay, so with that, I'd entertain a motion to end the meeting.
I second.
I move we close the meeting.
Oh, and then I second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye.